And the moral judgment obviously has to take into account the factual evidence, but the factual evidence in and of itself doesn't yield a moral or a political conclusion. You have to work that through. And I've been at this for about, as I said, about 43 years. And I had the good fortune as a young man, when I first got involved, to meet Professor Noam Chomsky. And then for the next 40 years, he was my mentor, he was my friend, he was my comrade, and he was the person who I always deferred to on questions of moral judgment. He had many spectacular qualities. He was a stupendous force of nature, and he was an inexhaustible force for good. And a kind of division of labor evolved between myself and him. I would do my research, I would go through the documents, but when it came to making moral judgments on complex issues, I always deferred to him. He was steeped in philosophy in general, moral philosophy among many other things in particular, and he had, in my opinion, exquisite political and moral judgment. However, on October 7th, he was not available. And for the first time in my life, adult life, I had to think through what seemed to be a complicated moral question on my own. Where did I stand on this? I'm not going to deny October 7th happened. It happened. As I said, I'm not going down that rabbit hole, that it didn't happen. But then what do you do with the facts? And I pondered and pondered. I sweated because I knew a lot of people were curious what my judgment would be, especially when it came to Gaza. And also because my judgments never deferred to authority. I should say mainstream authority. And after thinking about it for probably around a week, I began to read up on the Nat Turner Rebellion in the United States. The slave revolt, it was the biggest slave revolt in American history. It occurs in 1831. And for those of you who know the details, when Nat Turner embarks on the rebellion, he gives the order to his Confederates, if we can use that word. He gives the order, quote, "Kill all white people. Kill all white people." And that's what they proceed to do. They smashed the skulls of men. They crushed the skulls of women. They hacked babies to death. It was very brutal. No question about it. When you read about Nat Turner, kind of reminded me of the people of Gaza. Nat Turner was a very smart guy. Everybody, if you read the histories, agree on one point. Nat Turner was very smart. His confessor, who eventually published the Confessions of Nat Turner, his confessor said, for natural aptitude and intelligence, very few people, white or black, compared to Nat Turner. And then one historian, his name is Stephen Oakes, he said about Nat Turner, he said, an enormous chasm enormous abyss, an enormous chasm separated what Nat Turner aspired to be versus what he was destined in his whole earthly existence he was going to be. If you ever meet the people of Gaza, I don't sing the praises of people. That has a kind of element of romanticism, which I don't particularly, it doesn't appeal to me. But anyone will tell you the people of Gaza are very resourceful. You can give them a Coca-Cola can, and in a couple of hours, they'll turn it into a Mercedes. It's desperation. Desperation, necessity is the mother of invention. It's desperation. Very clever. And that huge chasm existed for them between what they aspired to be, what they, looking at the web, knew others could be, and what they were destined to be, their whole earthly existence. If you go back and look at what the abolitionists had to say, one of the most famous, the abolitionists were an extremely impressive group of people, those who opposed slavery. And one of the best known was William Lloyd Garrison. And Garrison edited the anti-slave, the abolitionist periodical called The Liberator. And when the Nat Turner Rebellion happened, he commented on it. And I have to say, I immediately ran to see what he had to say, because I respect a lot the abolitionists. There's a lot to learn from them. I've been spending the past few months reading about one of the greatest of the abolitionists, Charles Sumner, a person of just terrifying stature, extraordinary human being. In any case, what did Garrison have to say? He said there's no question what happened during the Nat Turner Rebellion was horrible. It was an atrocity. It was ghastly. He freely admits that. But if you read his statement, he never condemned Nat Turner. No. He was careful not to condemn Nat Turner. Who did he condemn? He condemned white people. He said, "We told you so, we told you so, we told you so. We told you if you treat people this way, if you degrade them, if you humiliate them, if you beat them, if you treat people this way, then don't be surprised by what happened during the Nat Turner revolt." And for me, at any rate, that seemed to be the correct way to morally reckon with October 7th. There were terrible atrocities that occurred,